been taught before. I feel like, it's rebellion. I was a rebellious kid too.
One of my favorite Hegel quotes is Hegel said that the only thing we ever learn from history is that we never learn anything from history.
I would just say that we're gonna repeat it, that's what I was gonna say.
Well,
Well, it depends.
that
Some
was
people are
his
smart enough to
frustration.
draw. Some people are smart enough to draw on history, especially philosophers, you know?
Well, there's a philosophy of history. You know, we see Vico talks about it being kind of like a cycle, thing. Hegel's is that there's progress. And we're really into, our contemporary view of history is much more like Hegel's. Thank you, Hegel. Although most people don't realize it, he's the one that really began that view of history, and that there is progress.
I think that's an explanation.
There is. It's never going to be for everybody, but I still think that because of the fact that we still haven't come together as a society, definitely change things. That we live in a world of insanity. What's the definition of insanity?
Yeah. Oh.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So hey, we saw that socialism didn't work. And 2 years later, hey, let's try socialism. We already know it doesn't work, Not in the basis that they're using it. Let's try communism. Let's do this. Hey, Venezuela just failed as a country using that same model. Hey, but we can make it. We can do it. We live in a world of constant insanity. It's not until we come together as a people collectively, decide what's best for everybody, and we all agree on that, we're gonna break that cycle.
How do I look?
Yeah, but I like the first one where you log in where you got your little cool hat on.
Oh, that?
Was that a deep fake, or did you actually take that picture?
My wife took the picture.
You still have the hat?
I did not actually have that hat.
Kind of looks like a pro. Right?
This is my face, but
It's superimposed on
the
painting.
I thought I had the actual picture here somewhere.
I saw it sometime in class.
Yeah, there was. Well, there's a picture. This is actually a picture of Rembrandt, titled "The Philosopher,"
I know a picture.
and it was
That's what I was
in the art museum, in the National Art Museum in Washington D.C. I think it's the I don't think it's the portrait gallery. It's the basic art museum. The big one that's connected to the other building underneath the street. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I'm not at the Air and Space Museum a lot.
But so I stood next to the painting, and my wife took a picture of it. Years ago, one of my students, the student who I've listed here, Alan Butcher, he asked me for permission to use that picture of me and the painting for his computer drawing class. And I said, sure. And he presented me towards the end of the semester with this picture, which I actually have a printed framed picture of it at home. I used to have it in my office, but you can see that he kind of early tools. So now I think you could do it much easier in seconds. But back when
And get rid of the spots you can, or the defects that you can really see when you try to superimpose someone else.
yeah, it's
not too bad.
It's not really. However. But that was fun. He got an A, by the way.
Got an A.
In my Alan Butcher, the one that gave me that picture, he got an A.
Well, sure, I did a good job.
I do try to give everybody A's. there are people that just work so hard to make
Not to
sure
get an
they
A?
don't get one. It's amazing
You defeat yourself in that.
to me.
I like those videos where they do the Karens in the car that get pulled over. They're trying to give them a warning, but they want to fight them the whole way and they end up in jail. I'm like, you just talked yourself into going to jail. You could have just shut up and listened, you know?
I saw one that was obviously AI generated yesterday, where the cop pulls over an elderly woman and she's sitting there. And he says, "Do you realize how fast you're going?" And she says, "Yeah, I'm going 22 exactly." And he said, "That's not the speed limit, that's the route number." And she says, "Oh, I was trying to be so careful." And he looks in the back seat and there's 3 women sitting back there and their hair's like this and they're staring. And he says, "Is everybody okay?" And the old elderly woman who's driving says, "Yes, we just got off of Route 119.
Ah! I got the reference.
That's cute. I realize it's clearly AI generated, you can tell. But at the same
That's cute. I
time,
like that.
that's fun. I don't know what to think of AI generated art or whatever we're gonna call it. But some of it is absolutely
That's all right.
hilarious. I love the parrot, that keeps talking to the police officers.
I've seen that one too.
It's hilarious.
No, I used to do my logo for my new business, so it came out really good.
However, well, we're on here actually. It's 11:32, so today we're going to work on Karl Marx. And we'll touch on communism a little bit. My quiz question associated with today is, what's the difference between communism and socialism? However, Karl, born in Trier, or Trier, however you say it, Germany. It wasn't Germany, but Kingdom of Prussia. So at the time, keep in mind that Germany's not a united country. It's got lots of different, 20 or 30 some different states. Italy was pretty much the same way. But in any case, he's born in a Jewish family. Went on to study at Bonn, where his father wanted him to study law. But he ended up fooling around, and so his father got mad at him and said, "You need to leave and go to the university in Berlin instead." So he went to Berlin. I think I mentioned while we were talking about Kierkegaard that in the years 1841, 42, not only was Kierkegaard there for several different visits, but Karl Marx was there, and they were both in Schelling's class. And so one of the things that I emailed you the note that I had asked Grock, however you pronounce it, this question: did Kierkegaard and Marx both study with Schelling in Berlin? The reason I wanted to ask that was because in Kierkegaard's biography by Garf, Garff, the author, the biographer says that yes, they were both in the same auditorium at the same time. When I was reading the biography of Marx, however, the author says he was there the following year, so they wouldn't have been in the same room at the same time. And so there's a little bit of a question: are they both there at the same time? So I asked that, and if so, why did they each take different approaches to their critiques of Hegel's philosophy? Keep in mind that at this point we're post-Hegelian, so So the assumption is that you're already aware of Hegel's philosophy. Whether you agree with it or not, of course, is the big problem. People are reacting to Hegel. Marx is going to react to Hegel and critique the idea that there are individuals that have freedom. Kierkegaard attacked the idea that we aren't individuals, and we, why on earth would you think there's a social being that's kind of a universal, human species, as opposed to each of us being our own individual self and having to figure our own way. Now, the thing is Kierkegaard talking about everybody? I would say he's talking really about people who have come to realize that Hegel's philosophy is like the current way of thinking, which it still is, actually. Although, remember, there's lots of different interpretations and arguments over how that actually works. The social construction of reality is my favorite way of looking at that. But so, why did they take different approaches to their critiques of Hegel's philosophy? Especially if they're listening to Schelling, who's you remember, he was a good friend of Hegel. They were roommates at Tübingen. They ended up having a close philosophical history. Schelling was the leader. Hegel kind of followed him, defended his philosophy as an improvement over Fichte at the time, and so on. He wrote his first book. Well, he wrote a book about Jesus, by the way, and in that book, Hegel argued that Socrates' morality and philosophy was actually superior to Jesus. So that's kind of radical, especially for someone who's studying to be a Lutheran minister. However, he was actually already past that point. But his next major book was on the difference between Schelling and Fichte's philosophies. So he was on Schelling's side, but then when he published his own book, The Phenomenology, he relegated Schelling's philosophy to a precursor to his own, and that, of course, cost an emotional breakup. Schelling was furious, and even though Hegel kept trying to reconcile with them and saying we're really more in agreement, that never really fixed things. That Hegel died early. He died in 1831 at only 61 years of age. And Schelling ended up becoming the replacement head of the university and head philosopher in the Prussian state in Berlin. And he made it his point to try to show that Hegel's philosophy was really a precursor to his philosophy. And so a lot of his lectures were critical of Hegel's philosophy. And you've got Kierkegaard sitting there, you've got Marx sitting there, even if they might not have been in the same exact moment together. By the way, Bakunin, there's a philosopher, a Russian philosopher named Bakunin, who's associated with Russian communism, that was also there. In fact, it points out there's a whole bunch of folks. Engels was also there, and Michael Bakunin and Alexander von Humboldt. Alexander von Humboldt must have been there as an older gentleman listening, because Alexander had already gone to South America and North America and made all of his books about the nature in all of those places, so he was already famous. So if he was attending the lecture, it was not, clearly as a young man, but remember the university eventually is named in honor of the Humboldts, both Alexander and William. So this is Groch's answer to me. Kierkegaard arrived in Berlin in October 1841, specifically to hear Schelling. Because remember, he was already familiar with Hegel's philosophy from his university days in Copenhagen, because Hegel's philosophy was the philosophy of the day. You know, Hegel had died, but he had, during his 15 years in Berlin, become really the philosopher of the German-speaking world. And it would gradually move into France, and it did move into England. Collingwood, I think, was the one who was the one that did that. Brought it into England. So, and notice it says that he hoped that Schelling would resolve his crisis over Hegel's philosophy. He had problems with. He attended from November 41 to 1841 to February 1842, 4 months, taking extensive notes and finding the lectures endless nonsense, but ultimately invigorating for his existential turn. And I think I mentioned last class that he wrote his book Either Or while he was there in Berlin during this time period, and when he came back home to Copenhagen, he had the book, a huge tome, in his suitcase.